Hey everybody, and welcome to the Jump Ball Podcast. I'm your host Mo Dakiel, and today my guest is Jared Dubin. You see him all over Twitter. He's a big part of it. You can check out his stuff last night in basketball. He does a great video threads on basketball. Obviously, last night in basketball. And we're just going to dive right into the NBA. So, Jared, you ready to tip it off?
Absolutely.
How you doing, my man?
I'm pretty good. Just trying never to watch a Wizards game again. I turned on Blazers Wizards from the other night, and I got disgusted with the Wizards within like 20 seconds. And I'm thinking about going back into my game watching schedule and removing every Wizards game I have until they make some changes.
I mean, it's perfect that you brought them up because they are the most interesting. They're just the dumbest franchise. Let's just be honest. I tried to be nice, but the news comes out yesterday. They're willing to trade everybody. They had a very volatile practice. Everybody was fighting with each other during practice, all that stuff. And I just look at it going like, now you decide you're willing to make moves and trade guys, when really you should have done this maybe a year, maybe even 2 years ago. I mean, if they do this over the summer, if they look to trade Beal over the summer, they have chances that guys like Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, and actually could bring back a piece. Now I just feel like they're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've got, sort of two thoughts on this. First of all, like you said, this should have been something that was done like a while ago. First of all, is anybody surprised that there's like locker room problems on a team that already hated each other and then brought in Dwight Howard and Austin Rivers?
Right.
If you're surprised about this, you have not been paying attention to the NBA for a while now. And then, I don't know that it really matters that they're willing to trade all these guys because it's still going to be Ernie Grunfeld making the call. He's been there I saw earlier today, he's been there for 16 years, and they have a 429 winning percentage since he's been there, with 2 playoff series wins or something like that, maybe 3. I mean, I don't understand how it's possible that he's still the GM there. I mean, he wasn't a good GM with the Knicks.
Right.
And then he got this job and has been just as bad, and somehow has the most job security of anybody in the league.
Yeah, Ernie Grunfeld gives hope to people who are just terrible at their jobs that they could find the next job. It doesn't make sense, just in the whole facet of things. You can't really defend him. I mean, it's not like they've made a lot of great moves over the time. Like you said, bringing Austin Rivers and Dwight Howard into the fold.
What are the good moves that he's made over time?
That's what I'm saying.
Basically just drafting John Wall and drafting Brad Beal.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And that's and the thing is, what's funny about it is, you said it, everybody knew we were coming to this point, and they were just the last ones to realize it. I mean, the smart organizations get ahead of these types of things, and maybe they shot Beal around last trade deadline, and they could find something. I honestly think, if I'm the Spurs, I'd rather have Beal than DeRozan. I don't know how you feel about that, but you could have made a run at Kawhi. Now it's just when I even look at the market, I don't even know who you would get that's out there.
Yeah, Beal is really good. So, he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy where you're going after a big fish with Beal and something else. You might be able to get a whole bunch of stuff for Beal as just, the team trading for a star. As the team trading a star, But look, this is, again, none of this feels all that surprising to me. The Wizards have been this team where we're they've got so much potential if they could only put it together. And it just never happens. We know what this team is at this point, and it seems to have run its course, and it's about time. And I saw that report from Woj yesterday, the first one that came out. Then there were obviously subsequent reports from Candace Buckner and some other people, where essentially Scott Brooks challenged them in practice, and John Wall was, can I curse?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
John Wall was like, fuck you.
Right.
Remembering now that a couple years ago, in Brooks' first season, I wrote a story about the Wizards after they had gotten off to a really bad start, and then they ripped off like this 14-5 stretch or 15-4 stretch or something like that to get back into things and get themselves, into the. I think they wound up getting the 4 seed in the playoffs that year, if I'm remembering correctly. But I spoke to Wall at the time after they went on that 14-5 run, and he had said at the time, like, there came a practice in like December or so where, Scott Brooks challenged us and everybody stepped up after that to have basically 2 years later the exact same thing. His reaction is like, have basically the exact same thing happen 2 years later, and now his reaction is to say, fuck you. I think that shows a lot about how far they've fallen in these past couple of years.
Right. Yeah, Scotty probably thought it was going to work out where he's like, if we do this again, like we're gonna get on that run, and these guys are just tired of it. The roster's gotten stale. The coach's voice isn't getting heard anymore, and it's not really Scotty Brooks' fault. I mean, these dudes, they all look like assholes. If you want the honest truth, I couldn't find joy playing with any of these guys. Beal might be my favorite guy on that roster, but let me ask you, is there even any any real interest you think in John Wall? And I mean it from like a good team. People talking. The Ringer had something about New Orleans should try to trade for him. I disagree with that. I think I'd rather have Drew Holiday than John Wall.
Well, there's nothing that says you can't have both of them.
That's true, but I'd rather have Beal over Wall if I was talking with Washington. My goal is to get Beal just because he's on a better I mean, man, 4 years from now, Wall's making essentially $50 million. Like, that just destroys your cap.
Yeah, I mean, it's not – but, we also saw Blake Griffin traded on essentially the same contract. I don't think that there's this idea that Wall is untradeable. I don't think that's true at all. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get a good deal for him. But I don't think that he's impossible to trade at all.
Right. I just don't think you're going to get a lot back. I think my thing is just they got to burn this whole thing to the ground. They got to get rid of Grunfeld, clean everybody out, and just start completely over. As painful as that sounds, I think that's kind of the best case scenario for him. What do you think of that?
I agree, and I think that there's almost no chance that happens because they're not going to fire Grunfeld.
That I agree with you. I just don't see them doing that. So before we move on off of Washington, because I know you don't ever really want to talk about them again. Where would you like to see some of these guys land? Where would you like the Seawall land? Where would you like Beal to land? I don't have any interest in Otto Porter, but where would you like to see Porter land?
I think somebody mentioned Porter and Portland the other day. I think that would be pretty good for them, although it would be sort of like a similar situation to where he's at now, playing off of 2 star guards as like an obvious sort of third guy, maybe even fourth guy, just because of how much Nurkic touches the ball. I do think he makes sense in their system, though. Certainly a little bit more than the way that they play in Washington, given that guys are so much more stagnant and standing around in Washington than they are in Portland, where everybody's sort of flowing around the court and flare screens and whatnot. I think that would be a good fit for him. I don't really know where I want to see Wall and Beal. Just not there.
not there. Yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised to see Wall end up somewhere like Phoenix, who's in dire need of a point guard and would love a star name. I could see Miami trying to get involved somehow and trying to get one of these guys. Besides that, I just don't know really where this team goes and what they do next. But let's get off this team as you take them off your watching rotation.
Well, what about actually? I mean, I don't think it would happen because they have these free agent dreams. But I mean, how good would Brad Beal playing next to LeBron be? That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think they need to start. I think the Lakers need to be a bit more realistic about their free agent chances. I don't know. I mean, they might have a chance at Clay. They might have a chance at KD. but like you're gonna strike out on some of these guys. If you strike out, you're screwed, right? Like nobody's the kids aren't playing well enough to the point where you can feel like you're getting great value. Like they're not upping their trade value at all. I couldn't imagine Brandon Ingram being the centerpiece of a Anthony Davis trade when Boston can top all of that, right? So I don't know. I think that's kind of like their big dream. I think Beal would be a great fit for LeBron. I think it'd be amazing to watch. I'm not sure how it would work. I'm knowing the Lakers, they could find a way to create another cap space spot to try to chase after these guys.
Well, look, in fairness, when has just assuming that a guy wants to come play the Lakers ever not worked out for the Lakers before? So
right. I mean, well, they keep doing this over and over again. They did it with Paul George. They did it with Kawhi, and
they did it with Kevin Love.
With Kevin Love,
they did.
It's like, guys, like, what are you doing here? It's not as alluring as it used to be. And the big thing too is that there seems to be some sort of like backlash of people not wanting to play with LeBron. So
I don't know how much I necessarily buy that. Just like, I mean, a couple guys not wanting to do it is not like a nobody wants to do it thing to me.
But the high level guys that they want are a lot of the times the guys that don't really want to do it is what is the feeling, and that's the worrisome part. Yeah, the mid level guys, the Chris Middletons and Kemba Walker guys would probably die to play with LeBron. But
if they wound up with Chris Middleton and Kemba Walker, that would be really fucking
that'd be
good.
Great. Are you kidding? That'd be awesome. I totally would be down for that. And I think that's more likely to happen. Some guys of that level than I think even swinging for the fences and getting somebody, getting a KD or anything like that. Because that's kind of just the way I see it. But switching off of it, what do you make of the KD drama since we're talking about him now and the issues going on in Warrior Land?
I think that they're still the overwhelming favorites to win the title, and if and when that happens, I think it changes things considerably from where they stand right now. I mean, obviously they haven't looked good these past few games, but Steph hasn't been playing. Draymond has sat out, I think, the last two. I was going to watch their game from the other night, and then I saw that Damian Lee played 29 minutes, and I was like, okay, this isn't a real thing, so I'm not going to watch that. Right now they're not the team that they're going to be. So I'm not too concerned with the fact that they've lost 3 in a row. As long as KD and Draymond end up able to stand the sight of each other on the court, I think they're going to end up being fine, at least as far as this season's concerned. KD is like, I don't think anybody can say like with any sort of certainty what KD is going to do this summer. It's pretty clear nobody really has any sort of real window into his thinking and what matters to him and what he even really wants. It seemed like, I remember the Zach Lowe story from last year after the finals. It doesn't even seem like KD really knows what he wants. So it's obviously very difficult for anybody else to know. So, I mean, I really can't say where he's going to go or why or how this offseason. I just know that there's a lot of time between now and July, which means there's a lot of times for things between KD and Draymond and KD and the Warriors to get better, and there's a lot of time for things to stay the same or get worse.
Right. I feel like nobody knows, like you said, what KD is going to do, and I don't even think KD does, but I feel like it just feels like this is the last run of this iteration of the Warriors to me. I don't know who comes back. I don't know who stays, who leaves, and whatnot. But it just feels like there's a little bit of just like, all right, it's time to move on a bit. Which that's where it kind of opens the door possibly for KD joining LeBron in LA. I think I think he's going to end up getting more criticism and seeing how well he handled the move from Oklahoma to Golden State and that criticism. I don't know if he has the appetite to go through that again. But you never know with these guys. The guy I'm really interested in is Clay. and really seeing what he does. I've heard stuff where if KD comes back, they're not going to offer Clay the max, and Clay might walk after that. Like that might be the guy, if I'm anybody, I'm trying to poach.
Yeah, I mean, he's the second best shooter ever. If Steph Curry didn't exist, he would be fawned over so much more as the best shooter of all time. I mean, it's not even particularly close. And Ray Allen is like my second or third favorite player ever. So that's
high praise.
That's how highly I think of Clay. He's incredible. He is also obviously a really good defender at all three perimeter positions. It'll be interesting to see how teams view how much the ecosystem that he plays in affects his performance. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I really want to see Clay as the number one scorer and see what he could do. Can he put up 35 a game? Like, I don't care. Like, he plays for the Warriors, and that's the ecosystem that I'm interested in him in. If he plays for someone else, that's when I'll get interested in what he could do elsewhere. But I mean, it's hard to imagine a better combination of shooting and defense that will be available this summer. I mean, he's really, really good, and it would be great for literally anyone that got him. I don't know necessarily that you're going to be thrilled about paying him like $45 million or whatever when he's 32 or 33, but that's a problem that you worry about 4 or 5 years down the line, because for the next few years it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and the thing that I really love about Clay's game is just how much he moves off the ball. And like, I get mesmerized by clips of just him running around off a screen, not open, going this way, coming back, like all these different just movement without the ball that he ends up creating a shot for himself. I'm with you on I want to see him as a number one guy. I actually don't want to see him leave Steph. I'd like the Splash Brothers to be together forever. In my perfect world, that's kind of the thing, because I think they play very well off of each other as well. Curry's screening is really, he's one of the best screeners in the league. I think it's a great opportunity with Clay's movement and stuff that they really kind of create some real fun magic out of it. And I'd be sad for that to go away.
Yeah, I mean, look, Clay is also a really good screener, by the way. He doesn't set actual screens as much as Steph does, but when they use him as the screener, if he comes and sets a screen on the ball for KD and slips to the wing, I mean, it's impossible for teams to deal with that, and that's something that they've gone to more so in the playoffs than in the regular season. It's just a really difficult action for teams to try to guard. You can't give KD room, but you also can't leave Clay slipping to the perimeter by himself, especially when they leave that entire side open. I mean, it's really tough, just the two of them. When you have Steph and Clay getting involved in the split action off the ball, whether it's Draymond or KD or Jordan Bell or Kevon Looney or whoever that has the ball either down low or the top of the key, again, that is impossible to guard. They're basically perfect fits for each other, and I would love to see them play their whole careers together too. There was some other sort of, I mean, I get like KD and Russ, like I would have liked to see them play together for their whole careers just to see how it would have happened. But I mean, I'm not one of those that's like, oh my God, KD is the worst. I can't believe he went to the Warriors, that kind of thing. I just think it would have been cool to have KD and Russ spend, 15 years or so trying to go at it together. But I also think it's pretty cool watching KD with the Warriors.
Right.
It's I just like watching good basketball, so it's a little bit different than some other people's attitude toward it.
What you're saying is, if you could, you would clone KD a couple of times, put him on a few teams.
I think if I was really saying what I wanted to do, I'd just put him on the Knicks. But
well, no, I know your fandom, and I know you're hoping for that this summer. That's the dream Grand Slam scenario for the Knicks, right? Is luring KD from the Warriors to the Big Apple.
It's like the first thing that every one of my friends asks me whenever I see them now. It's like, what's the chances we're going to get KD? And I say the same thing to them. I've been saying the same thing since before last season. And my answer is that there's a non-zero chance, but not a good chance.
Good way of putting it. It's going to be interesting. His decision this summer is going to be interesting. I think they'll be fine this season. I think once Steph starts playing again, he's the engine for their offense. I think he really drives a lot of that screening action and gets a lot of movement. And, for me, it's essentially porn when I watch Clay and Steph in the post-split action kind of stuff. So it'll be fun once they get Steph back, and they'll be fine. And like you said, I still can't see anybody running away with it. They're still the favorites to win the championship. Even though as wild as the West has been right now, I mean, who would have thought the Blazers would have been the top team in the conference right now, with the Clippers, Memphis, all these teams behind them. What is your take on the Western Conference in general?
My take is that it's really weird, and I don't know what to think yet. We're like 20 games into the season right now, which is pretty crazy. I feel like the season, or I guess actually not 20. Most teams have played like 16 to 18 games now that I'm looking at it. So a little bit less than a quarter of the way into the season, which, that's pretty far already. And I did not expect to see Portland in first right now. I did not expect to see Houston out of the playoffs right now, or Utah out of the playoffs right now. I certainly did not expect to see the Kings at 9-8 and 2.5 games back of the number one seed. That said, there is a little bit of, I don't want to say luck, because they have been good and certainly much better than expected, but they have a negative point differential and they're over 500. So I would expect them to drop back just a little bit. But man, I love De'Aaron Fox. And that's been since before the draft too. He was my favorite point guard. Just in terms of like the enjoyment I got out of watching him. Like I like everybody else, thought Fultz was going to be the best, but I did when I used to host the Locked On Knicks podcast, I did a series on all the potential draft picks they were going to get, and I was like, yeah, De'Aaron Fox is my guy. And I'm really happy to see him be much better in year two.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to piss off some Laker fans, but I had some questions. I kind of liked Fox over Ball, and kind of thought maybe that would be a thing. I get the homegrown thing, and Ball was destined to be a Laker, but that hasn't turned out all that great. The Kings are fun, man. Like, I watched them against Oklahoma City last night. I'm with you. I don't know how long this will last, but this is still the best 20-game run they've had in 10 years? Like, I can't imagine.
There was that season like a couple of years ago, I think, where they started off pretty well, too. But then Boogie got mono or something.
He got sick. I think mono. I think he did end up having mono, and that was the year.
And then they just fired Mike Malone like a week later. Yeah, very strange. But
did you get flashes this weekend when there were rumors about them being upset with Dave Yeager about Marvin Bagley's playing time and that he might actually get let go? I was like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, the Kings, as we all know, stay the Kings.
Yeah, they can't help themselves, man. It's embarrassing. And this is what gives teams like Washington hope, because they realize they're not as dysfunctional as everybody else.
And they might be just as dysfunctional.
Probably. I did want to talk about Philly. I really wanted to talk about Jimmy Butler in Philly, but obviously this morning the news came out that Fultz isn't going to play until he sees a specialist early next week, a shoulder specialist. Man, what? I don't even have words. It's just like, damn, really? Like, we're really just. How long are we going to keep doing this with Fultz?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing to me about that report was the fact that it's at the direction of his attorney. He's going to see a shoulder specialist. And to me, my first thought from that was, there's possibly going to be a lawsuit filed against team doctors for either misdiagnosing his injury or mishandling the treatment and rehab. I don't know why else it would be at the direction of his attorney. That's total speculation, but that was the first thought I had.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say on that is that Raymond Brothers is actually an NBA agent. It's like he's one of these guys who players hire. Instead of hiring an agent, they hire an attorney, and he's one of the more common ones. Like, he's had a few.
Oh yeah, I mean he's been around the league for a while, but the phrasing of
at the behest of
at the direction of his attorney, that was the first thing it made me think. And again, that's 100% speculation, but just as a lawyer, that was my first thought.
What kind of, just in case I need it, what kind of law you practice, Jared?
I haven't actually practiced in a while, but I went to law school. I practiced for about a year or so after graduation, and then I went into writing full time.
Perfect. All right. Well, if I'm ever in trouble, I'm still calling you, so you're gonna have to deal with it.
I'm not gonna be taking the California bar anytime soon. So, if you need recommendations, though, I can maybe provide those.
Okay. But the whole thing with the Fultz stuff, it's just it looks bad. It looks bad for the organization. Looks bad for the kid. We had I don't know if you caught it earlier this year. His player development coach Drew Hanlon had tweeted something out about him being injured. Eventually, their relationship kind of deteriorated a few weeks ago.
Yeah, what a coincidence that Drew Hanlon's relationship with Fultz deteriorated right before those horrifying videos of his free throw form came out.
Right. I mean, the whole thing's a mess. I feel bad for the kid. I hope he finds his way back somehow and kind of, just figures it all out in some way, shape, or form. To me, I just don't think it happens in Philly. I think he needs a total change in scenery, situation, and everything. I don't know what value he would have, but I think that's just the way I look at it. Is like he's got to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean that was essentially my first reaction after they made the Jimmy Butler trade too. Like he's not good for them right now. They're not good for him right now. He needs to be in a place where he can, sort of not necessarily develop under the radar, but work things out on and off the court outside of the ridiculous spotlight and coverage that goes on, not just of him, but of like everything surrounding him in Philly. It's just clearly not going to work out there. That said, I don't know how you can sort of liquidate the number one pick asset this soon after you took him and after this was this much hope and given, what you went up and gave up to get him with. It's hard to imagine his value getting any lower than it is right now. I mean, what are you going to get for him at this point? I mean, it's wild to think how far we've come from 2 years ago when like he was the no-brainer number one pick. Like it wasn't even a question. Many people, like Danny Ainge was essentially the only person that was like, I'm not going to take this guy number one, and everybody, myself included, thought he was crazy. It's wild.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The only thing I disagree was I actually had a different view of it with Jimmy. But once Jimmy Butler came on board, I thought this was the perfect kind of opportunity for him because I felt like it would have taken a lot of pressure off him to be that third guy because now they got that. He doesn't even have to be the fourth guy because J.J. Redick's going to get his looks and things like that. I thought it would have been an opportunity for him to play a little more relaxed, and he looked that way actually in the first couple of games. He looked relaxed. He didn't put up great numbers, but he was getting to the rim, crashing the offensive glass, and making a couple plays here and there that I felt like, okay, like this is going to be an opportunity for him to kind of fly under the radar because all the attention is going to be on Jimmy. And in that situation, I thought that might have worked out. But now it's just like, you wake up and there's a whole new situation, and you're just like, man, this now he's just for the good of the kid. I think he's got to go. I don't know what value. I don't know if you get much back for him, but I think you just got to move on from him. But what's your
Yeah, I was right before we jumped on this call. I was in the middle of watching their game against the Suns last night, and this is probably the worst that I've ever seen him play. So
yeah, and that's why he lost his minutes to McConnell in the second half. I like TJ, but I don't have any false sort of hope about what kind of player he is, But he did come in and give him a boost last night, and he just looks like that little Energizer bunny that was just dying to get off the bench, and as soon as he did, he just went apeshit.
Mm-hmm. That's like in the middle of happening that I paused right before we jumped on the
call. Right. Well, you'll see it as you go into it. But I think I think that kind of played a role into it a little bit for Fultz. But gosh, it's a tough deal for him. Like, he's just gonna struggle. But how much have you watched of Philly since they got Butler? I know you're watching this game now, but is this the first one you've watched with Jimmy?
No, I watched them against the Jazz the other night, and then I saw like most of overtime when he hit the game winner.
Well, so what's your impression so far of Jimmy and Philly?
I mean, it's not perfect yet. I do think that it's going to take some time to iron out everything offensively. Like, he disappeared for most of this third quarter that I'm watching right now. Like, there are times when he sort of floats in and out of the offense, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have Jimmy Butler, let's run some stuff for him. It's going to take some time to figure out how to get all the moving parts working together, but it's just such a lift during those stretches where he really asserts himself. And especially on defense, they can now match up pretty much any way that they want. It's a really good fit. It's not the cleanest fit in the world, but just the two-way tenacity that he brings, his ability to create off the dribble, is something that they didn't really have from anybody other than Simmons. They've even taken to putting him in some of the actions that they use for Redick, which, again, is not a super clean fit, but because he essentially can just do stuff off the dribble rather than on the catch and shoot immediately after, like JJ does, it's been working pretty well. So I like what I see so far.
Yeah, I think, I had something in the posted yesterday about Jimmy and his fit, and I think part of it is he's got to change the way he played. He's a very pick and roll dominant guy in Minnesota. Sixers don't run a lot of pick and roll. They're going to run more now that they have Jimmy, but they're still a DHO heavy offense, as you know, and the that play they run where Jimmy comes off the Iverson, the one that they ran for Redick, come off the Iverson and then into a double pick and roll with Embiid and Simmons. I actually think that's almost better for Jimmy than for Redick, just because I feel like Jimmy can do more with the ball, and then if you have Redick on the weak side of that with, set a pin in action or a pin down going on the weak side with Redick, I think it kind of gives them just another weapon on the court when they do that. I think it's interesting. I'm more and more excited. The more I watch it, the more I think this is really going to work for them. Also because, listen, Jimmy's an asshole. Embiid's an asshole. Simmons is an asshole. JJ's an asshole. And I mean this in the nicest way possible when I say this, in the sense of like they're all going to talk to each other. They're all going to yell at each other, and it feels like they're all going to be able to take it. I think I think Jimmy himself said that after, I don't remember if it was the Hornets game or the Jazz game, but he came out and he was like, you can say something to someone here and they just say, okay, and then they go and play. It's not, nobody's sensitive around here. So I do think that sort of attitudinal fit is better for him. Yeah.
One thing I want to see more of, though, is like direct interplay on court-wise in terms of what they do schematically between him and Redick. Like, they use Redick as a screener a lot of the time for Simmons in pick and rolls on the few that they do run. They use him for Fultz. They use him for Embiid. Show me some of that with Butler. I think that could work really well.
Yeah, and I think the two of them are going to become – I think we're about to see a budding bromance. Like, I think we're on the beginning edge of it. Like there's the meme in between, from the – I think it was the first game where he him and Redick were both like pumping each other up during a timeout or something like that, and it's just I'm watching it going like, oh god, this is gonna be, and Jimmy's kind of trying to be all is diva-ish, and I just feel like him and JJ, there's gonna be a bromance. We're gonna look at it going like, these two guys are best friends now.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine them just being sort of simpatico personalities from the little bit that I've talked to them both over the years, especially because like Jimmy's whole thing is basically nobody works as hard as me, And like, if there's anybody in the league that does, it might be JJ. Like that dude, just like you talk to anybody around the league, like legendarily for years, Redick works so hard.
I mean, like,
And it's so obvious on the court too. Like just on the floor during games, it's hard to imagine somebody. I don't necessarily want to say working harder, but just doing more on the court because, like, I don't think I've ever seen him stand still.
yeah, he's another one of those guys, like constant movement guys. And the thing that I don't think JJ gets enough credit for really evolving his game or adding to his game. I mean, you remember when he first came into the league, everybody was like, "Look, he's just a shooter." Now he can. I mean, listen. Now he can put it on the floor, 2 or 3 times. I've seen him make a couple of fakes, and use that to get to the rim. A couple of handy little, like, crafty little dribbling moves, and to fake out the defenders and get to the lane. He made I want to say it was in the first game. He made a great pass off the dribble, one-handed to Butler underneath the rim for a dunk or layup and stuff. And like, this is things like when JJ first came into the league, nobody envisioned that he could do this, and that kind of became a thing. And I don't think he gets enough credit for how much he's improved his game or added to his game over the years, because he's more than just a shooter. He's an average defender, but he knows where to be defensively, which is
that's exactly where I was going to go next. I remember at the Sloan conference, I think it was either 2012 or 2013, whatever it was, right after Stan had been fired as the coach of the Magic. He was one of the guests on the basketball analytics panel, and there was a discussion about JJ Redick, and he was basically like, nobody would ever call JJ a good defender, but I would take him every time because I know that there's a 100% chance he will be in the right place at the right time for the right reasons. And even if physically he's not, the best defender in the world, I can trust him. And that's something that it took him a while to do in JJ's first couple seasons in Orlando, but eventually he worked his way into being, the second or third best player on that Orlando team by the end of his time there. And I think he's been that same sort of defender ever since. He's not somebody you're going to stick on a wing guy and be like, all right, go shut him down. But he knows where to be and why. And that's something that you can't say about every player in the league. Even guys that are, obviously considered better defenders than him. And, the way he knows how to leverage his shooting, it's not just, I'm going to come off this handoff and I'm going to space the floor. Like, he's an incredible pin down passer. That sort of Kyle Korver action where you come off the pin down, you draw both guys, and you just drop it over the top. He's been one of the best in the league at that for a really long time now. The way he sort of will take a dribble handoff, pump fake, hand it off back to the big man, then take another handoff going the other way. I mean, he just knows exactly what to do in basically every situation because he's seen so much of it at this point. I love him, man. Like, I hated him so much at Duke.
Everybody did.
And it's now been like a while that he's been one of my favorite guys in the league. Like, I wrote something for Grantland like 5 years ago about how I was growing to love JJ Redick. So it's been a while now.
Yeah, and like I said, I just don't think he gets enough credit. One last point about the Butler deal, and then I want to talk about one other team before I let you go. The other thing too is they got a go-to guy at the end of games. It's hard for the post-up guy. Like Embiid, it's hard to get him a shot at the end of the game in the post usually. They were using Redick, obviously, when they needed a three. It's hard to put the ball in Simmons' hand when he doesn't shoot free throws well. I mean, he shoots these things so flat-footed, it drives me insane when I watch him shoot a free throw. But, you have Jimmy, and you saw it in the Charlotte game. It's you have a guy, at least you could put the ball in his hands and, look, just go create, go make something happen. I think that's a real big added value that they're going to get from Jimmy that I think is really going to make a difference for him.
For sure. I mean, it's very difficult to, like you said, have the post-up guy be your go-to guy down the stretch. So basically what they've been doing is just throwing the ball to Embiid like at the elbow extended and having them run that handoff action with Redick and trying to figure out how they can, get an opening that way. And again, that's difficult, especially when everybody sort of knows that it's coming. You need a guy that you can put sort of at the top of the offense and create downhill, whether for himself or somebody else. And Jimmy is not perfect at that, and you can give him a little bit of space just because he's not necessarily going to walk himself into a pull-up three, and he's not the kind of passer that Simmons is. But you can put him up there, and you saw when he hit that game winner, like he has the ability to create that look for himself. Like Ben Simmons is not creating a step-back jumper from the top of the key. He's just not. So it's certainly a different look for them that they haven't really had. Like that's what Fultz was supposed to be, but he forgot how to play basketball.
Yeah, unfortunately for everybody else. The last team I kind of want to cover real quick is what in the fuck's going on in Boston? I mean, I get it. To me, it looks like a team that just has too many mouths to feed. I mean, they need they're not going to make a move because I think they're going to hold all their pieces to try to get AD this summer should AD become available. But like they just got too many guys. It's you can see it when you just look at the box score and how many minutes certain guys are playing. Like you can feel something festering. They're not shooting the ball well. Jaylen Brown's had a horrific start to the season. Gordon Hayward's going to take a long time. I don't think people realize it's going to take him a while to kind of become Gordon Hayward if he could even get there. But it's something that's going to take till January or February, and that's if he's getting consistent minutes. What's your read on the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, the encouraging thing to me is that their defense is really good. That's something that we expected to be the case, and it has been the case. And I think that will help them win games while they try to sort things out offensively. The thing everybody's talking about is figuring out how to incorporate everybody. And, like you said, are there too many mouths to feed? A lot of times when I watch them, I see it's not really the opposite problem, but I do think that there are times when they're trying to make the perfect play rather than just taking the play that's in front of them a lot of the time. Like guys taking, too many extra dribbles to try to set up a perfect pass, or, we have to get this backdoor alley-oop, or, I have to, put 3 extra moves on my guy off the dribble when there's somebody open one pass down the line. I think if they just started making easy plays rather than trying to make perfect plays, things would sort of click into place for them a little bit more. That said, this is not... I mean, at this point, it's a trend. Like, Brad Stevens gets a ton of attention for his out-of-timeout plays, and they're great. And I think the design of his offense is good. But for a while now, the offense has sort of added up to less than the sum of its parts. I don't necessarily have a firm handle on exactly why that is, but it's happening again, and it's an issue now. Like, this was supposed to be something that was sort of cleared up by just having so many different parts that you could use, that even if the offense was less than the sum of its parts, it would still be, top 10. That hasn't happened. I do think they certainly have the potential to get there, but something's got to change. I don't know whether it's the design or the lineup combinations that they use or what. It's concerning, but not panic time.
Right. And the other thing too was, and I think I fell for it a bit too, was the acceleration that we thought the acceleration we thought we were going to get from Tatum's game. Everybody and again, it just kind of goes to that thought process that development's not linear. It's not just a straight line. There's ups and downs and stuff, and we've seen the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but he's shooting way more mid-range than he did before. He's doing more off the dribble. He's not at shooting at the rim as much as he was, or shooting threes. And somebody, I forget who termed it, but the Kobe-fication of his game and all of that stuff. It's been a bad start for him. He might be putting up numbers. I think he had a decent game last night in their loss to Charlotte, but it's not really, you're not really seeing that. What everybody expected was him to take a leap this year, fair or unfair. You're just not seeing it. What have you seen from Tatum?
Yeah, I mean, I posted something about this on Twitter the other day when I was watching them play. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. Let me pull it up. Toronto. And I was, sort of wondering in my head, like, why do I enjoy Tatum so much less this year than I did last year? Like, I said on Twitter a bunch of times last season, like, I enjoy Jason Tatum way too much for a guy that's on the Celtics and went to Duke. And to me, it's just he's not getting to the rim. Like I posted a screenshot on Twitter. I think he's gone from like something like 31% of his attempts at the rim to 19% or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but that sounds right in my head. That to me is a very big issue because he's taking more threes than he did last year, but so many of his at the rim attempts have sort of been shifted into like the 10 to 15 foot range, and the Kobification of his game, if you want to call it that, it's not a good thing. Like it's fine to take mid-range shots, it's fine to create your own ISO step-back jumpers, but it's way better to get all the way to the rim. And he just seems to be too willing to settle right now. And I could definitely do without every single TV broadcast bringing up 100 times about how he went to Kobe to work on his game and just lionizing everything about Kobe. Are we ever going to reckon with the fact that he was like accused of some horrible things?
No. Like, Jared, we don't talk about this, Jared. We brushed this under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, like we don't have to pretend that Kobe is like the greatest person in the history of the world every time we talk about him on a TV broadcast. And like, I mean, it's really tough, obviously, for players in the league, a lot of whom grew up idolizing him and still consider him sort of part of their fraternity. It's obviously very difficult for them to reckon with that. It's difficult for those of us that just grew up watching Kobe and liking or loving him somewhere in there. It's extremely uncomfortable at this point, the way it just is not mentioned at all. And we just basically bring up his children's books and, he worked with Jason Tatum and all this other stuff on broadcast. Like I've had enough of it. Like either bring up what happened or don't talk about him at all.
Right. I'm with you. And actually the Washington Post did a great piece on Kobe, kind of changing his image. And they touched on, look, this is very much what he's done, Kobe.
Yeah, I would have liked if they had not agreed to do that story because he refused to answer questions about it. But, they certainly did a story about how he has changed the narrative post-Colorado, basically by embracing the fact that he's a bad person, which
is really something else, too. And the fact that we do give him a pass on it is shitty. I mean, even all the way to him getting the Academy Award during the Me Too movement.
Yeah, and look, this is not an isolated thing in the NBA either. I mean, Isaiah Thomas is still on league-sanctioned air multiple times a week.
Yeah, I mean, we still have has anybody even heard what happened with the Derrick Rose? Because I think they had a hearing or something on the 12th. I haven't heard anything about it.
I haven't heard anything about that appeal either.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff. That's a podcast for another time that we can dive into.
Yeah, sorry to end on the sort of somber note, but
yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Jared.
Yeah, when it gets brought up about Tatum, I mean, it's happening on literally every broadcast. Anytime you watch the Celtics, the broadcast team wants to bring up that they know about what Tatum did this summer, and it's just, I mean, it's a dereliction of duty not to mention it when you're talking about him at this point.
More importantly, do you really want somebody to go work out with Kobe? I mean, I get the allure. Listen, I grew up a Kobe fan, watched him as a kid and all of that. But at the same time, too, it's like he's not one of the. I don't look at him as the greatest player of all time. I don't look at him that way. And you kind of, a fairly ineffective, inefficient way of playing is what Kobe did, and he played in that era. Do you really want your guys working out with him? Like that's kind of another thing. Is that really a good thing? But that's the thing, and we're seeing it in Tatum's game because, like you said, he's shooting way more mid range now. He's not getting to the rim. He's not shooting threes. It's just becoming an issue for him.
Yeah, and I'd like to see. I mean, I think it's something that's going to take time, but I'd like to see just more, playmaking for others out of him too. Use sort of the attention that he draws when he does put the ball on the ground to, find out Horford on the roll or kick it across the court to Kyrie or Hayward or Jalen or somebody else. I think somewhat more concerning than Tatum's shot selection might be Jaylen Brown's complete sort of fall off the face of the earth.
That's the other thing.
he was a guy who sort of showed up in my notes basically a ton every time I watched the Celtics last year, and that has not been the case this season. I don't know what it is. He seems less aggressive, less assertive, both ends of the floor, which is a problem since, playing really good defense is supposed to be sort of part of his calling card. I need to see the 2017-18 Jaylen Brown again.
Yeah, and all Celtics need that to kind of feel more comfortable with where they're at.
Yeah, it might just be me, but it feels like the Marcuses have been like their third and fourth best players this year. It's good to have two guys coming off the bench that are good, but when those guys are among your handful of best players, it's also not.
Yeah, that's scary, and you hope that everything course corrects, because the East is going to be fun this year. I think I with Toronto and Milwaukee and Philly, Boston, Indiana, I think you have 5 teams in there that can make things really interesting in the playoffs, and hopefully Boston figures it out and gets their shit together. Jared, I've taken up too much of your time. Where can people find you? What are you working on? When's the next Last Night in Basketball coming out? Plug your stuff.
I'm on Twitter at JADubin5, and since I write at a bunch of different places, that's probably the best place to find all my stuff. I had something come out today, which I'm really excited about, that I've been working on for a long time. I created the perfect NBA roster under the salary cap, and you can check that out. It's at Fansided, or you can find it on Twitter. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. I created the perfect roster under the salary cap, following a few other rules as well. I'd like to see, if people can create a similar but better roster using the same rules that I followed. I think that would be pretty cool. I got a bunch of other stuff coming out in the next few weeks, and I'm in discussions about some other stuff. We'll see what happens there. Last Night in Basketball comes out every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday from now through the All-Star break. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from the All-Star break through the end of the regular season, and every day that there's a game during the playoffs. So it's going to be up a lot because I was working some NFL stuff last night. One hasn't gone up today yet, but I'll have one tomorrow and Thursday because there are no games Thursday night, so I'm going to do back-to-back days.
Okay, nice. And there will be I'll post the link to your fan-sided article, with the podcast, so people can find your stuff there. I'm a big fan. I highly recommend checking him out if you haven't already. Jared, thank you so much, man. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for our show. Be sure to rate us, like us, leave reviews on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, wherever else you go to listen to your podcast. Have yourselves a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next week.